Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Ultimate Spider-Man issue 8 by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Checchetto. Earth 6160 continues to tick on, and so does Peter Parker's life as Peter and MJ get ready for Richard and May's birthday party. I love how no matter when Hickman writes these Peter MJ family dynamic scenes in this universe, it always feels like it's taking a stab at the 616 Peter and MJ who can't have this for whatever reason. Like, I know Hickman isn't that petty of a writer, but this just existing is the complete opposite of what the guys writing the main Spider-Man book want and do, and it's just so much worse over in that book because of it. Peter finds himself distracted by the fact that his son and daughter are 1 year older now. Although it's obvious that the weight of everything he's learned about his world and his superheroing job is also taking a toll on his life as well. MJ sees him on a mission to pick up a cake with Ben and Jonah for the party, but before he does, Peter ends up having a conversation with his suit, fueling more of the symbiote illusions as the suit reveals that it can be active without Peter inside of the costume. The way it talks as well is kind of scary too, as it has this kind of threatening tone, although like a very ominous tone to what it's saying, and Peter even picks up on it and is a little bit worried and wants to have some words with it once he gets a chance to after the party. The book then jumps 3 weeks into the past and shows us the end of the last issue where Iron Lad turned up in Peter and Harry's sparring session. Harry and Peter of course have some questions and Tony answers them, revealing that the Pictotech suits were sent to people who might need them the most, and Peter got the most advanced version because he was on the top of the list of people that the Maker changed in this universe. Thus why Tony focused on him more than anyone else really. Of course we've seen what Maker was planning on doing, basically getting rid of all the heroes so there's no one to stop his plans, but I also like there's a little bit of a meta turn to it in that Spider-Man is Marvel's most popular character. He's insanely popular, everyone and their mum knows who Spider-Man is, and I love that's how Hickman is treating him in this universe, making him the first real superhero, and you know, he's at the top of the Maker's list, so of course he's going to be brought back first by Iron Lad because he's the one who's going to inspire a lot of other people. Harry isn't too happy learning first there is a list and that he actually was not on it, meaning that he was kind of inconsequential and he just got the suit out of dumb luck. Tony of course isn't happy someone's wandering around with his proprietary technology, and so he reveals Harry's identity much like how Harry revealed Peter's. And there's a great moment here where instead of forming an antagonistic rapport with Harry, Tony of all people kind of acts like the adult and realizes that they were just blind kids one day and then they had their eyes opened to the true nature of their world the next, and that their fathers weren't exactly good people and had a hand in controlling this world. So it's up to them to stop it and to fix the sins of their fathers because those sins don't define them as people. Tony decides to let Harry keep the suit and the company he took, since as he puts it, he's moved on to bigger and better things. But Harry doesn't trust Tony at all, wanting Otto to upgrade the security of their suits so Tony can't hack them anymore. I quite like what Hickman is doing here with Tony and Harry having a sort of, you know, good guy, bad guy, antagonistic relationship with one another. Both characters who, to my knowledge, haven't really had a thing in the 616 universe. They've never really met or had sort of like a butting of heads. So I think that's really interesting. It's something new that we haven't seen before, and I'm intrigued to see how it's going to be handled because these characters usually aren't the same age. Usually Tony's a bit older than, you know, Harry and Peter, but here they're all around that same age, and that's what I find very interesting about this. On top of that, they're all in this superhero game together. They all started out around the same time, so no one has more experience than the other, and I like that that's made them all have even footing when it comes to dealing with each other. It's also interesting to note that both Tony and Harry want the same thing. They want to stop the Maker and save the world, but for vastly different reasons, and I can see Harry thinking that Tony is just replacing one Maker and his cronies with another Maker and his cronies, those being the Ultimates. In the present, Peter, Ben and Jonah pick up the cake for the kids' birthday party, and Pete and Ben get to have a great chat about Jonah being a little bit lonely, so he gets to tag along to the party and kind of be the family's fun uncle, which is a very fun role for Jonah, and again kind of feeds into the whole sort of bickering married couple that Jonah and Ben have become, being that they're this great double act where they're always together and they're always bickering with each other, and it's just a really fun dynamic we've never seen before. Ben and Jonah also drop a little bomb on Peter, revealing that the paper is up and running and they want Peter to join them. Peter is understandably gun-shy since of course his superhero work is taking a lot of his time up, but also the bugle job he has gives him a financial security for him and his family. However, Ben knows that Peter hasn't actually said no yet and knows he's probably going to end up joining him because he'll get a raise. And I think that's going to be quite interesting because we learned last issue that Gwen Stacy and Harry are sort of bankrolling the paper, so then technically Peter will be working under Harry, which is a very unique dynamic and one that we haven't really seen before, and it makes me beg the questions like, what's Harry gonna do then? Because Harry then kind of has control of Peter. He can actively affect his home life because of this job now, so that's really interesting. The group head to an arcade run by the old villain Arcade, and the party gets well underway. Jonah, who we've seen bonding with both Pete and Richard over the course of these issues before, gets another moment with Richard, and it's a great mirror of Pete's conversation with Ben earlier, where now Jonah thinks that Ben is the one who's a little bit lonely and he's the one who's sort of sticking around to keep Ben company. And again, this is like bickering couple sort of things where one thinks the other and the other thinks the same, and they're sort of a mirror of each other. They're perfect for each other. So Jonah ends up having his own version of a great power speech here to Richard, imploring him to go out into the world and get a job and help find his purpose and responsibility in life. He then also gifts Richard a book that he wrote, which is like a self-help life lessons book, and it's the perfect thing for Jonah to write because of course he wrote a book like that. But I really like how he frames it as this is something that not only he wrote but he published and like made himself and sold himself without anyone's help, and it's like all him, and he put that out into the world, and there's something admirable about that, and he's imploring Richard to do something like that, which is a very neat lesson to impart on a child. And I really love this dynamic that these kids A, both exist, but B, they also have all of these really positive role models in their lives, and that it's not just full of tragedy, which if this was to exist somehow in the 616 universe, their lives would be full of tragedy. As the Parkers celebrate the kids' birthdays, Fisk meanwhile meets with Wesley, his number 2, who we don't think actually have seen up until now, and I like how he's being brought in as sort of like Fisk's fixer. He's there to sort of sort out everything for him, as he is in, you know, the comics and what we've seen of him in the Daredevil TV show. And Hickman finally introduces us to what is to become the ultimate Sinister Six, beginning with Martin Lee, or Mr. Negative, who sees over Queens, running Feast by day and the Demons Gang by night. Of course, he's very much similar to how he's portrayed in the Spider-Man video games by Insomniac, very heavily inspired by that one instead of the usual Mr. Sinister. I do like his redesign though. It's a very fresh new redesign. Next, Black Cat, but it's not Felicia Hardy this time. It's her father, Walter Hardy, who's in charge of the Bronx. I really like that Wesley stresses that all of these guys on this team have like secret identities, like they're someone by day and, you know, a cat burglar or a gang leader by night. And I think that's actually quite interesting because usually we don't get that with the Sinister Six or really any other villains. They don't usually have like a day job. It's usually just them being villains 24/7. It gives them that little bit extra depth. Kraven is the next on the list, and his backstory is a pretty complicated one, as he was exiled from Russia during the Rasputin Purge, where the mutants who control Russia in this universe threw his family out of the country. The whole concept of the clone Cravens and the sons of Cravens aspect is also briefly touched upon, as it's revealed that Kraven hunts in pairs, with him killing and then I think what it's implied to be like another Kraven or like his son or like a family member being the one who does the saving. And it's not really made clear what that actually means, whether that actually means like he's saving the targets or like saving the trophies, or like he's like actually like a hero and is actually saving people. It's not made very clear, and I kind of wish it was. I'm sure it's going to get expanded upon in future issues with this Kraven, because he is obviously going to be sticking around. He's a big time Spider-Man villain, but it's a really cool dynamic, and I'm intrigued to see how Hickman further does the whole clone sons of Kraven thing. And that was one of the most interesting aspects about Kraven for me, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he translates this into the Ultimate Universe. Next up is Mysterio, who oversees Brooklyn, and it's funny how all of the other villains have some sort of big redesign or look, yet Mysterio looks more or less the same. You know, big fishbowl helmet, purple cape, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Living up to his name, Fisk actually doesn't really know a lot about the man, and he's a bit of a mystery, but we get a fun little joke where Black Cat thinks Mysterio is shorter than the last time they met. And then in the next panel, Mysterio is made himself a bit taller, having shifted the illusion around him to make him appear taller than Black Cat. It's a fun little thing, and maybe gives it like a bit of a hint into Mysterio's character. Maybe he's a bit vain, and you know, he's throwing up all these illusions to make himself look grand, whereas he's probably just going to be like some feeble man who's just hiding and running away from himself. The meeting soon gets underway, and the final member of the team arrives, Mole Man, someone who Wesley describes as Wilson's oldest and dearest ally, which is quite interesting since usually Fisk and Mole Man don't run in the same sort of circles. I also like they included Mole Man as one of the 6 boroughs of New York, since yeah, really he is, because he lives under the city, of course, and he can get anywhere and everywhere in the city because of that. So of course you would want to have someone like that in your back pocket, and someone who can access all the areas of the city you need him to. The book ends with Fisk getting into the meeting and telling the gathered members of the Sinister Six that they are going to make a game out of dealing with Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, something which the next issue will begin. Ultimate Spider-Man issue 8 was another fantastic issue that I feel will upset a lot of people, since there wasn't any Spider-Man action again. This was all pure character and story development, and I adore the time we get to spend with these characters, especially people like Jonah and Fisk, who are just so much worlds apart from their 616 counterparts, yet still very much familiar, just little changes that somehow have a big effect on their character and make them even more compelling. Hickman has a knack for writing fantastic little character moments between the Parkers that make them feel like a functional family. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do with the Sinister Six next issue, and how that's going to change the dynamic between Peter and Harry's professional superhero relationship. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.